What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Before we start, a lot of you guys entered actually yesterday for, well, one of these guys, where when we hit 50,000 subs, we will give this away. So if you have not already entered, make sure you're subscribed and check the link that I leave in the description every time, and you can enter your name into the hat for a drawing for the new 2DS XL. And with that, let's get started today. The first thing we're going to talk about today is the big news from yesterday, which was Capcom announcing that Resident Evil is going to be making its way back to Nintendo console, specifically the Nintendo Switch, of course, at this point. But the big thing is, I mean, we haven't had Resident Evil on a Nintendo system since Revelations on the Wii U, which was a little more than 4 years ago now, so it's interesting that Capcom, I guess, they have had this planned, but of course, they did see how Ultra Street Fighter 2 sold, so now it looks like, yeah, they are interested in moving some games over. Now, of course, Revelations 1 and 2 would be easier to port to the Switch, considering it still runs on the same MT framework that things like Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, for example, ran on, and Resident Evil 5 was already shown to be running on NVIDIA's Tegra a little while ago, so yeah, it's probably easier to port that over and get that done. Now, it's also being re-released, which is odd, but I guess they're fixing some stuff up and adding some things as well, in their words, but it's going to be re-released on the PS4 and the Xbox One as well. That's coming August 29th, and what they've said is, well, later on this year at some point for the Switch. Doesn't seem like they have a firm release date, just that it will be out before the end of 2017. And this is really interesting because it shows that Capcom, despite these games being ports, right? I mean, they're games that have been out, been released again, and then again. But the fact that Capcom is going to take the time to port these games over to the Switch shows that it does have some renewed confidence, I guess you say, in the Switch from really the Wii U, because the Wii U definitely set Nintendo back with a lot of publishers and developers with how poorly it did. Obviously, Revelations on the Wii U did not sell well at all, so I think it set Capcom back into let's be conservative and see how this does. We see their financials for Street Fighter; they did well on the Switch. So now I think Capcom, as they said in their own words, we're going to start moving games over to the Switch. I think they are more interested in this market now because they see the Switch buying power that they saw with Street Fighter, and honestly, Revelations 1 and 2 being moved over to the Switch as a portable unit, those will probably sell. I think a lot of people like those games. Those games are good. They're not bad games at all. They're good games. And now we'll be able to play it on the go. So I'm excited to get it on the Switch, even though I've already played these games. I own them on Steam, for example. When they first came out on Steam, I remember there were some weird issues, but they've pretty much figured all those out, and it runs well. So at this point, I'm just excited to get them portably on the Switch. The first one was on the 3DS, but let's be realistic here, it's going to look way better on the Switch and play better. So I'm excited to get it. Just hopefully we get a release date soon. As far as we know right now, sometime before 2017 is up. And if there already wasn't a good reason for you to at least get a Japanese eShop account on your Nintendo Switch, seems like there's a better reason now, as Capcom also announced that Monster Hunter Double Cross on the Switch will be getting an eShop demo on August 10th. It's pretty easy to open one. I'd recommend doing it because when you do, you could be a part of the people downloading this and trying it out on your Switch. And that, of course, is mostly because the Switch is not region locked, but keep in mind it will be pretty much all in Japanese, I'd assume, so while it will be harder to play, you can at least boot it up and see how it runs on the Switch, how it looks, for example, in hopes that we will eventually get it localized here at some time, even though Capcom has said so far there are no immediate plans to bring it over. I think it's pretty obvious they will when the Switch version is done in Japan and has sold through, because they'll probably want to release, based on the connectivity that they have between them, they'll probably want to release them both at the same time, so you can walk in the store, you can get a 3DS version or a Switch version, and then of course through the internet you can play together, which is pretty cool. There are quite a few tutorials now on how to do that. I'll see if I can link one for you guys down in the description if you do want to open a Japanese-based eShop account for this demo coming August 10th. And if you're a fan of the Mass Effect series, well, there's some bad news for you, because it looks like the studio that was behind Mass Effect Andromeda, BioWare Montreal, is actually being absorbed at this point by EA Motive Studio. And what does that mean exactly? Well, it means we won't be seeing another Mass Effect for quite some time. Consider how bad Mass Effect Andromeda would have had to have been here to have them essentially close down the studio by having it absorb into another studio. By the way, that studio is currently working on Battlefront 2 single-player mode, so nothing to do with Mass Effect Andromeda. We hear about how the DLC was canceled, and at this point, it has put on a massive hiatus it was an embarrassing situation, obviously, with Mass Effect Andromeda. They have fixed a lot of the weirdness that was going on in that game, but I have a feeling just EA in general, BioWare, they're just embarrassed, and they probably they're just trying to get away from it for now, and maybe they can revive Mass Effect in, honestly, I'm not even kidding, 4 years, 5 years. It's gonna be one of those things where we forget about it for a while, and then all of a sudden it pops up at an E3, and we get excited for it because, well, it's been away from us for so long, we forget about the disaster that Mass Effect Andromeda was when it came out. Now, we also talked about the .hack GU collection that is coming to the PS4 and PC later on this year in Japan. They've already told us that it's also getting localized and brought over here, in their words, sometime later this year as well, which is interesting. But something really cool was announced yesterday, and that is that there is going to be a brand new Volume 4 added to the collection for fans. Now, the games were originally done in volumes, much like the older dot hacks were, where there were 4 games in the original dot hack series. Then you had GU, which had 3 games, or volumes if they want to call them. And in this case, they're adding apparently a brand new one that kind of, I guess, takes place after the 3rd one, which is interesting. So you're not only getting a collection that I'm sure will play better and look better overall, you're getting brand new content. This collection so far is shaping up to be completely worth the money, and I'm looking forward to it. It's really cool, by the way, that it's coming out on the PC as well. So there's going to be a whole bunch of people who get to maybe even enjoy this for the first time, since honestly, dot hack GU on the PS2, not the easiest game in the world to find. But the fact that they're adding a brand new piece of content for the whole story to the game will also, I think, appeal to a lot of fans of the original trilogy. It might give them a reason to pick this up, even if they've played the other 3 to death, give them some new story. And in our last bit of news, guys, let's talk about Sony's financials that they did release. This leads up to the end of their fiscal quarter, which ended June 30th. And they told us at this point, well, there are 63.3 million PS4s out there. Remember their last fiscal report they had 60 million PS4s. So it sounds like in 3 months or so, they have actually made 3.3 million PS4s get out to the world and shipped. But overall, Sony had a pretty good fiscal quarter, as you would expect, right? I mean, they generally do pretty well. They sell a lot of systems, they sell a lot of games. However, it's interesting to note that their operating income actually fell by 59% over, well, this time last year, mostly because they had a big game last year at this time, well, it was in May, which fell into this fiscal quarter, called Uncharted 4. And that did well, obviously. It was a big first-party game for them, and they really haven't had any big first-party title this past fiscal quarter. And that makes sense why the operating income would be down, even though their sales are up. Keep in mind, though, they also cut prices on their PS4. The PS4 is $50 cheaper this past quarter as opposed to last year's quarter. So it makes sense, right? Instead of you selling the system for $300, you're now selling it for $250. So even if you sell more of those 250 units, if they're very close, the 300 unit is going to sell more and you're going to make more money from it. So that's why their operating income was down. Not a big deal after they really explained why, and I would expect it because Uncharted 4 doesn't come along, that very often. That game has sold incredibly well. It's over 9 million units sold at this point, so it's no wonder. I do think, though, when something like God of War releases, that will also set the bar very high for their next year, that fiscal quarter. It's interesting the way business works. You're always competing against yourself from the last year, and if you just didn't have anything at this quarter, well, you're going to lose to yourself from last year. That's the way it goes. They're not doing poorly, though. They're doing very well, and they probably will cross their expectations of 18 million PS4s shipped this end of this fiscal quarter, which would put them at a massive amount of PS4s. Very interesting to see if they do cross that 100 million mark before the pressure from Xbox One X makes them jump to a PS5. Because once they announce PS5, the PS4 sales will slow down. Who knows when that announcement comes, though, but it's looking more and more, based on what developers are saying now, sooner than we think. Maybe we do hear about a PS5 in 2018. It could be very interesting. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about any of the stuff we talked about today, whether it is Resident Evil finally returning to Nintendo platforms since Revelations 1 on the Wii U, and then, of course, on the 3DS. It's kind of coming full circle, because now Revelations and Revelations 2 is coming to the Switch. Of course, it'll run better, it'll look better, and overall, that's a good thing. And if they sell well, I don't see any reason why Capcom wouldn't think about bringing other games over. Maybe that rumored Resident Evil 2 remake makes its way to the Switch as well. That would be awesome. I would love to see that on a portable system like the Switch so I can play it wherever. Very cool. Also, if you're a big Dot Hack fan, let me know what you think about Volume 4 being added. Apparently, an original piece of content added to the collection. It's almost like it's a new dot hack game that you get with the collection. Really, really cool stuff there. That's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.